One of the nice things about this virtual thing is that we can tap talent and interesting projects from across the globe and bring them right here into our living rooms. Um, I like to normally get local people to talk when we're in person, but this is a really cool way to see what different people are doing in different areas. And so if any of the rest of you have any cool things that you've seen that you want me to bring in to talk to us a little bit more intimately to the smaller group, always feel free to pass on opportunities like this to me. I'd be happy to facilitate a workshop or a demo or just a conversation with someone about some in-depth things that they're working on. So yeah, thanks to Jessica for taking the initiative to do that. I super appreciate getting content. And I will pass it on to Tessa and Kellie here at Codebots to introduce themselves. Feel free to keep using the chat. I'm going to keep monitoring it, but I'm going to turn my video off so you can focus on their faces. And Tessa, do you want me to take over admitting people from the waiting room? Okay, excellent.
That'd be good. All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So I'm Tessa. I'm the education lead at Codebots. And with me, I have Kellie. He's one of our senior developers. So he wrote the technology, which underpins everything that we're doing. So as you can probably hear, I'm Australian. It's morning over here. But thank you for joining us around dinner time. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you the Codebots platform. I'm going to show you how it can help with modernizing old systems. A little birdie told me that a lot of your roles in data science where you are is around convincing people to take really old like spreadsheets or applications and move them onto more modern technologies, which is kind of all about what Codebots is about. So I'm just going to walk you through what the platform can do, what it can do for you. Now, if at any point you have any questions, please shoot them through into the chat. I'll answer them at appropriate times throughout. Or if you want, you can just send a private message to me or Kellie if you've got a bit more of a private question. All right, I'm going to take things away. I'll share my screen. All right, can everybody see that? I'm going to take that as a yes. So this is the Codebots home. So what Codebots does essentially is it helps you build online applications. It's not a no-code platform. There is still code which is required to work with it, but it does essentially all the heavy lifting. On average, our bots write about 92% of the code base. Can be a lot higher, can be smaller, depends on what you need from it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with showing you the app creation process. So it's pretty simple. You can come in here, hit the big green button, you can't miss it, and you join the app wizard. So we offer two types of apps at Codebots. We offer the custom app, which means you start with a blank canvas. But the other thing we do is called what we call legacy migration, which is what I'm going to show you today. So what it does is you can import an existing database and start modernizing. So if you've got a super old app, maybe it's on Access, maybe on something else, we can help you migrate that into our platform. We offer two different tech stacks. We have the Springbot tech stack, which is a Spring backend and Angular frontend, or we've got the C# bot, so that's a .NET backend and a React frontend. They're pretty much the same. C# bot has one more behavior than Spring, but they're pretty close. All right, I'm going to pick C#, and what I'll do is I'll show you what we can do. So I'm going to select, I've got a demo import. And I can just import it. And what it will do is it'll analyze the schema. So Access is completely automated, but we can help you with any other type of database as well. We just can't automate that part, but generally have a turnaround time of a few days to get it ready. So it's just going to sit here. The bots are analyzing the schema, and huzzah, it was processed successfully. And I can keep going. I can pick a name of the app. I'm going to call it 16th of October. Nope, too many. And just like that, what I had in the database in Access is going to be available for me to work with here on the platform. Now the bots are just going to set things up a little bit, get them ready to go, and I can show you what it's like to actually build with our platform. Before I start, I will invite Kelly to join me because he is part of my team. And you can see what it looks like when we're editing at the same time, because we're all about that teamwork here at Codebots, and we don't want to make it so that only one person can edit at one time. So if I start building my app, the first page it's going to take me to is the build diagram. So we use 3 different diagrams at Codebots. Oh, hang on. Let me just log out and log back in again. We use 3 different diagrams at Codebots. We have the entity, the UI, and the security diagram, and together they kind of act like the blueprint for your application. So the entity diagram is essentially a data structure. So you can see here, because I use the Access migration, I've already got things in my entity diagram. So I had a supplier in my database, I had an order, I had a product, and it's pulled through all of those. It's also pulled through the different attributes which belong to those things. So you can, if you have an Access database that you want to modernize, it's super easy to bring it onto the platform. Now, it's all well and good to have this data structure ready to go, but you also want to be able to do things like the interface and security. You want to be able to have login pages and that sort of stuff. So what you can do is you can add in as many attributes as you want against an entity. We've got a huge range of attributes you can select from. Obviously, I've already got attributes in here, so I don't need to add any. But what you can also do is you can add in behaviors. So behaviors are sort of like pre-built functionality that we've trained the bots to use, and you can plug them into your application so that you don't have to write them yourself. So user behavior is our most common one. That lets you log into the system. It captures their name, their email address. It lets you configure security based on the user groups. We've also got forms if you want to capture data, workflow if you want to capture states, timelines to see like the history of an entity. So we've got a whole range. I'm going to pick user and put it here on my employee so that if I build this app, the employees can log in. That'll be a user group. And I will add in one more entity to capture my administrators. I'll just pop the behavior on that one as well. And just like that, I've got a super simple diagram here ready to go. So essentially it's just like a little order application. You can create new ones and have suppliers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my interface. So the interface, it's not like you can't change your colors or your fonts or your themes or anything like that. What it is like your page structure. So like high level building blocks, which you can shift around on the page. So I'm going to create a new page. I'm going to call it orders. Oh, if I could type this morning. I'm going to set this one as the home page. And then what I can do is I can add in different tiles. So we've got a CRUD tile here. So I don't know if you're familiar about the CRUD acronym, but that is create, read, update, delete. This is one of our most powerful behaviors that we have is the CRUD behavior. Because what I can do is I can put this on a page. I can choose what entity I want it to be selected to. So I might put it in as orders. And if I was to run this page, I would get a list of all the orders in the system. I would be able to create new orders. I'd be able to edit existing orders. I'd be able to delete them. So all of that just from me doing 3 clicks of the button. All right, so I've got the orders page. I'll just throw in a custom tile as well. So the custom tile is how you can add in custom visual elements. I'm just going to put this in as a footer to show you what it looks like if you're doing custom stuff. So we've got entity interface. The last one we touch is the security diagram. So as you can see, I added an administrator user behavior on the diagram. I also had an employee. So I can now control the create, read, update, delete access. for all the different things that we've got in the system. So I'm going to give administrators access to everything. Employees, I'm going to give them access to everything except for my admins, and the employees don't need to be able to create new employees, but they can do everything else. And then my visitors are just not going to have any permissions. Now, what I'll do is, I realized I missed this earlier, is I'll show you what it looks like when Kellie's collaborating with me. So if I come back to the entity diagram, you can see Kellie's mouse moving around at the same time as me. He can click and drag and move things around, and it will update on my screen as well. So you can have a whole team of people working away at the same time. Thanks, Kellie. So we've got our diagram set up, we've got the blueprints ready. Time to let the bots actually build. To do that, I'm just going to hit the big orange build app button. Now, we use Git repos to host all the code, but we don't want to lock you into using our system. So if you want, you can use your own repo, but if you don't care or you have no preference, you can use our Git repo, which we set up for you. So the bots are just going to go ahead and set up that repo for me now, since this is a new app. And then I can show you what it looks like when they're actually building. All right. So the first thing that we're going to see is a console. This is the actual real console the bots are outputting. It's not just some fancy, cool looking code that we put in because we thought it would look interesting. It's the actual bots running their code. So right now they're validating my diagram and they're making sure I don't have any big mistakes in there that they can't build to. And here we are on the fireworks page. So it'll just take a moment to warm up, but this is an actual accurate representation of the bots bouncing around the file system, creating files, editing files, updating them as required. There we go. So it's going a little bit crazy. It's like a kid who's hyped up on way too much candy. But you can see the stats down the bottom of the screen. It's writing a huge number of code right now. So it's written about 80,000. It's just going through and updating some last files. So you can see done in the space of, what was that, 5-10 minutes. I had my old Access database. I've got the system here ready to go, and I've got an app which I could start working with a basic interface. So I will check out my Git files. I probably don't have access just yet because it's the first time I set up. It still needs to give me access to the repo itself. Let's try that again. There we go. So you can see the repo which has been set up. Now, if I come into one of the files that the bots wrote, so if I find one of the view files, to this footer tile that I wrote earlier, and you have a look at it, you can see there are a lot of these protected regions throughout the code. So this is how you are able to work alongside the bots. So the cool thing about the bots is that you can change those diagrams, you can rebuild, and the bots will make the changes for you. But protected regions are how you make sure that they don't overwrite what you've written. So what you can do is you can go to a protected region, you can turn it on, you can write whatever you want in there, commit your changes, then the bots will go, they'll make changes to the repo, they'll act just like any other developer, but they won't touch any code inside those protected regions. So that's how you're able to work alongside them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you that app running locally. So to do that, we use, sorry, wrong way. We use Docker to get things running on the local machine. So I'll just open up my Git and I will pull down my repo. I just need to copy the details. So now my code's going to get cloned down onto my computer. I've got my Docker desktop here running. So Docker is a program we use. And if I show this in my Finder, we've got what we call a shortcuts folder. I just need to come in here, and we've got start and stop commands for all the major operating systems. So I can double click on Mac Start and it will start running my app locally. So it just has to warm up. It takes around 5 minutes, depends on how powerful your computer is. But it's just going to start things now. In the meantime, if anyone has any questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to answer them now. Otherwise, I can show other parts of the platform. Would anyone like to ask anything?
So I don't know if everyone's watching the chat, but there's some answers already in the chat. Sorry, I don't know who I just interrupted. Go ahead.
Tessa, I just want to know that the database that you, is it like a SQL or, so, you know, the ER diagram, you draw it, that was a SQL, based on SQL, right? Now,
Kellie,
so I got the answer like a CSV file. So how can I, like, I can just import the CSV files? It will take, like it says, like it will delay, but I can still download, or I can import the CSV files, right?
I can answer these ones for you, Tessa.
Yeah.
With these ones, so first question I believe was talking about the database that's behind the application. So the default database that we actually use for both our C# and Spring bots is a SQL Postgres database. We don't, that's just the one you get out of the box. We do use a couple of different technologies to ensure that you do actually have flexibility in switching out the database technology if you want. Of course, you don't have to. I'm perfectly happy with the Postgres, which is part of the, which is good. It's part of the reason why we selected it. But you can switch it out. We don't have any hard requirement for it to be a particular database technology. I haven't tried it with NoSQL or some of those more esoteric techs, but I believe it should work as well.
In terms of the actual migration process, so Access is the only one which is completely automated, but our dev team are able to help you with pretty much any type of database. Obviously, the more complex it is, the longer it's going to take. But that interface there where you can upload the file, there's also the option to select the file type and send us a message, and we'll get in touch and help facilitate that whole process. Yeah, so you can send us just about anything.
And is the documentation, like what are the things I need to download? Means like, you know, the Codebot software, or right? So is there any documentation that I can get it? Like what are the things I needed and what the requirements of the system?
Yeah.
So Codebots is all cloud-based except for when you're running your app locally. So if you want to access Codebots, you just have to go to codebots.app, and all the building and that sort of stuff is on there. In terms of actually running and editing it on your local machine, you need some sort of Git client to work with the code. Then you just need Docker to run your app locally, and then you can use whatever sort of editing tools you want to actually work with the code. There's not really many restrictions around what you need.
Okay.
Did you want to add anything to that, Kellie?
Yeah, other than we've made special effort to make sure that the entire development environment does run up in Docker, which is what Tess is actually demonstrating now. And part of the reason it takes a little bit of time is because that's actually setting up all of the dependencies for you. It's setting up your database, it's setting up your server, it's setting up your client. So it's doing all of that for you to minimize any dependencies you'll need to install. So it's just Docker and Git that you strictly need to get this working. Of course, any other tools you use in your normal development day to day also work well and play well with this as well.
Okay. And is it secure? Because I have some CSV file with some sensitive data, so I can definitely, you know, it is secure, right? I can upload my file and then it will be fine.
Well, what we care about is we care about the structure of the file. So if you want, you could potentially just remove all of the data from it,
Okay.
and just send us the structure, and we could work off that. So,
Okay.
yeah, we do keep it secure. It's only the people who are working with your database who actually gets to see it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And then talking for security for the target application as well. Once you've got your schema, once you've got your application pulled down through Git, the actual target application does follow a very strict security policy as well. That is defined by that security diagram, where we strictly define who has access to what. So it's that target application, once you pull the data into it, is perfectly fine for sensitive information.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for such wonderful questions. It has filled our time quite well. Unfortunately, I am on one of the slower computers to running the application locally. Are there any other questions that we can answer while this is still starting out? Okay, well, what I'll do is I'll take us back to the platform, and I'll just show you some of the other things which the platform can do. Because we're about supporting the entire development lifecycle, not just the building part of it. So we offer plan and test sections as well. So what you can do is you can come to test, and you can work with the tests that the bots write for themselves. So everything we write is bot written. So what you can actually do is you can come in here and you can sync with the repo. And what it will do is it'll pull in every single test that the bots have written. And so that's not just generic tests, that's actually specific to your entity diagram. So if we just wait for this to load, you'll be able to see a list of everything. So I've got my admin group here. You've got older product suppliers. So we've got all of these tests, and you can run those tests whenever you want. The other thing you can do is you can come in here and you can create new scenarios. So you don't need to know how to code to write it. All you need to do is know how to put together a sentence. So we use this Scratch style interface, which is drag and drop. You can drag out scenarios saying, given I go to the URL of my site and I click on X element, I then expect this thing to happen. So you can build out all these tests without using a single line of code, which we find is quite helpful for a lot of product managers, because they like knowing how well their application is tested, but they don't know how to test it themselves. So this helps automate that process. The other thing you can do is you can also link to issue keys. So if you use Plan, what you can do is it's a Kanban style system where you have boards and you have tickets and you can just move them through the different columns. So kind of like a hybrid between Jira and Trello. So if I made a new board called Workshop, what I can do is I can look at the board and I can come in and I can create issues, and then I could tell Kelly I need to do this thing. So if I made an issue called users can log in, it would make a ticket for me, and then that ticket can be moved around. So this part has concurrent editing, so Kelly could jump in here and he could make more tickets and he can drag and drop them around as well. What you can do is if you've got specific tickets like that, you can also hook them back up to your tests. So if I came back to my test section, is that you, Kelly?
Yep.
So what I can do is I can come in here, I can view the scenario, and I can hook it up to the ticket that I just made. And I can go to the traceability matrix and I can see every requirement that I've made. I can see whether it's currently passing, how many tests are testing it. So it's a really good way of getting a really quick overview of how well everything's working. Now, the plan section is only available to our pro users though, meaning you will need a license to access it. But the license is 80 Australian dollars a month plus tax. So it's not very much, and you get access to a whole range of cool things, not just plan. Now,
Tessa, might be worth just addressing a question that came up earlier around the pricing of it. We do actually have, so the free tier does give you access to unlimited access to a single app and a single user for that build diagram. So you can build out your apps and you can do everything up until that plan section, I believe, with the free tier. Is once you pay the pro license, you just unlock everything else and unlimited users.
All right, it looks like something's actually gone wrong with the running of my application, unfortunately, which is not great. What I might do is I'm going to stop trying to run this application and run a different one which I have available. So I'm going to run the LMS application because that app that we built isn't going nowhere. I suspect what happened is because I use an Access database schema, there is some sort of dependency in there, which means something can't be made unless something else exists, but it can't exist because I haven't made that other thing yet, which does happen sometimes when we're working with imported diagrams. So what I'll do is I will stop this Docker and start a new one. My apologies, everyone. I assumed that the file that the techies gave me would work when I tried to run it, but that obviously is not the case. So I'll run a different one. So the app that I will be showing you, our LMS app, is one that we commonly demonstrate because what it does is it shows off all of the behaviors that we offer with the bots. So I'll just check my Docker is good, no containers running. Right. And we'll start this one instead. So before I start showing you the LMS, what I'll do is I'll show you all the behaviors that we do offer. So I've got this little slideshow here. So what are behaviors? So behaviors are the pieces of pre-built functionality. Some of them you add in the diagram, some of them you can just utilize inside the code. Each of them requires varying levels of code to implement, but they can help you save a huge amount of time when you use them. So we've got CRUD, which I've already talked about before and you'll see shortly. So seems super simple, the ability to create, view, delete things, but it's actually quite complex. It can take a very long time to build in a new application, but you can just plug it in just like that. Developer API.
I would just like to mention the CRUD stuff is an incredibly useful behavior, and it's one I've used probably the most talking to CSV migrations. So that's what I've typically seen spreadsheets used before is for CRUD, and the CRUD behavior pretty much encompasses that almost completely by itself.
So if you have an application which is mostly around just basic data entry where they have to be able to create new things, edit them, update them, you can build out almost all of your app from scratch just using the platform with barely any human written code necessary. We've actually done it a few times with various government agencies. They seem to love their basic CRUD functions, and to a lot of success. We were able to spin out platforms and apps for them in the space of a few weeks that normally would have taken them months to build themselves. We've also got the user behavior. So that's all around the security, the login, getting email addresses, that sort of stuff. You've got the forms. So that is a way of capturing data. You can configure the forms in the backend. So kind of like a survey builder. You can create surveys in the backend. You can ask users questions. You can put in different validations saying these questions are required. We've got show logic or skip logic. We've got one or the other. That essentially based on what they answered in X, you can show or hide this other question. Then we've got the workflows behavior. So if you want to apply a state to something, so maybe you have a form which needs to be approved by 3 different people, you can use the workflow behavior to put states on that and progress them through the workflow. And then we've got the timelines behavior. So the timelines behavior tracks what changes are made against an entity. And then what it can do is it can display those over a visual timeline. So you can get some really cool graphs and data. So if you need any sort of logging information, timelines can help you there. All right, looks like my application just finished running. So I will come back here to localhost. There we go. All right, so this is my LMS, so my learning management system. I am so sorry I couldn't show you the app which we actually built today. I will definitely be having a word with our developers. But this is one that we also use to demonstrate. And I promise you it wasn't smoke and mirrors. This is actually one which has been built in Codebots. It only took about 15 minutes to put together, this particular one. And it's only got a little bit of custom code. You're completely right. It's the law of demos. It always breaks whenever I'm talking to an audience. So what you see here, this is the CRUD behavior. So I'm not logged in right now. What I will actually do is I will log in. So there is an administrator user group on here. So I will log in as that. Just close that. And this is the CRUD tile. So as you can see, these are articles which are displayed on the system. I can see a list of, we've only got 2 articles in here because it's just a demo app, but you can see a list of them, and for each of them you can view the article, you can edit the article, or you can delete them. I can also create them because I've got permission to do that. So I can come in here and say sample article, the summary. So content, so this was custom code, I believe, Kelly. Just put in the markdown editor.
Yep. So this is a combination. This LMS app is a combination of a little bit of custom code and bot written views. So the only there's very minimal custom code in this one, and this markdown editor is one of those things. But yeah, that's only that little markdown block on this page. That's the only custom bit on this page. The rest of it is completely bot written.
So here you can see we've got the workflow. So what we did is we applied the workflow behavior to articles so that we can choose whether they're published or unpublished. A very simple interface, but it's very powerful behind it. I don't have any books. It was updated by me. See if any of those are required. They're not. And so simple as that, I've now created a new article in there. I can come back and I can edit it. I could delete it. So this, I believe this one is also a custom view, just so that it's not showing the full CRUD interface. So tiny little bit of custom code, but apart from that, it's all very simple. So that gives you an idea of what CRUD can do. We've also got the courses here. If I go into the admin backend, we've got, you can see the users and the user groups. And these are all the different entities which are available in the diagram. So actually what I might do is I will change to the LMS system so you can see what it looks like in Codebots itself.
So the key difference between the LMS system that Tessa's demoing now and then the migrated one that we just tried before is the LMS was actually built from scratch on the diagram editor. So we started with a blank canvas and we started creating those entities as we went. So that's why that took around the 15-minute mark to get that up and running, purely because we're designing the schema for it. And you can see it's a little bit more complex here as well.
Yeah. And you can see we've got the forms behavior against lessons. We've got the user behavior over here as well. We've got both the timeline and the workflow behaviors against our articles. So if I go to the LMS and I find an article, I can look at the, it needs to be in the, it needs to be in the timeline view. So I can see a timeline of the changes made against my article. So I can click on it and I can see there was an article created here. There was 2 articles created a week or so ago. I can also view it in the list view and you can see information about what was made. So it's a pretty cool interface for just literally adding it to the diagram and letting it do its thing. In terms of the forms, I'll show you what a lesson. Oh, we don't have a lesson made yet. I'll just whip one up super quick. Cool. So this is the form builder that I was talking about earlier, where it's like a survey. You can have slides and you can add in questions. So I might add in a checkbox question. and it's going to be something like,
Might be worth mentioning here as well that this form builder is a completely out of the box feature that you get with the forms behavior. You can add custom questions, and Tessa, I believe the only one in this list that's custom is, again, the markdown question and the library article question. So the markdown one was the same component that we saw before in that CRUD. So we're sharing that component across both behaviors here.
So I could add in some random text in here, and then I could ask them a question like, do you understand? Add an option. Yes. Add new option. No. And, oh, whoops, I didn't actually save the no, but you can see just like that, you could put together a form and I can save and publish it. And then on the front end, you would be able to go out and create a new lesson form. So that's kind of it for all the behaviors that I can show you. We do have the workflow here. So if I looked at the states, you can see there are 2 states here. You can edit the transitions going in and out. I can make a new state and I can edit it saying that you can go from sample to published. Just give it a transition and you can choose whether it's got the ability to return and that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, we can't you can't automate things if you change on the transition. So if you wanted to say send an email when you go from published to unpublished, that doesn't come out of the box, but what in the custom code, we've made it very simple for it to be able to be implemented. That is it for the demo, which I can show you today. Are there any questions around what we showed you? Maybe questions about the case studies that we've done or around the tech stack?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I have a decent sense of what you're getting at, but maybe hearing a little bit about what people have used it for would be helpful for me to understand if I've interpreted what you're saying correctly.
Mm-hmm. So we've got a software company called Working Mouse who we partner with. They use this technology to build every single one of their apps. They've been working with the Codebots technology for 2.5 years now, and they've been making software that whole time. We're capable of making mobile applications. It just needs a little bit of custom code. We've done really cool, we've done websites. We've done, as I said, a lot of government apps, which are around the data entry. Kellie, did you want to talk a little bit about your experiences with those ones?
Yeah, no worries. So two main projects, because I probably have a good bit of insight on this because I used to work within the services business, Working Mouse, which was that company Tessa just mentioned. And I've only just recently come over completely to Codebots. So I actually worked on these projects using the Codebots platform. The two that come to mind off the top of my head would probably be one that we did with the Queensland government's transport main roads. That one was coming from a CSV, or probably more than just a CSV. It was a very, very advanced Excel spreadsheet that they were using to track all of the services information that they had across the Queensland government. So what we did, we used that the Codebots technology to migrate that into a pretty much what it ended up being was a data administration dashboard using the CRUD behavior and then using the developer API to allow that to integrate with the rest of their system. That one was, so that's coming from that Excel spreadsheet migration. And we took the opportunity as part of that migration to do some optimizations and improvements along that path as well, so that the actual resulting schema was a lot cleaner, much better validation on it. I'm sure you're all familiar with Excel spreadsheets and bad data being submitted into those just because we can't stop people from doing it. That was some of the stuff that it helped resolve. It also improved maintainability and performance of it because it's being migrated into a cloud system. It was then instantly updatable. We were able to do all the redundancy and all that sort of stuff really easily. Another project that we worked on was with Police New South Wales, where we took seven, I believe it was seven access databases, and then migrated them onto a single web application to resolve that. And again, that was very heavily, most of the heavy lifting was done by the developer API and the CRUD behavior, with some custom views for the data management to fit within their businesses or their business units' workflows. Those views were just purely aesthetic UX changes to make that work.
All of these projects, the base code was spun up within a matter of a week or two, right, Kelly?
Yeah,
so then it was just minor stuff.
The minor stuff was really, most of the time spent with that minor stuff was going back and forth between us and the business, and making sure that the workflows and the changes actually fit with their requirements. So the actual development time for each of those was very, very quickly. But I believe we completed the Police New South Wales project in a total of 4.5 weeks, complete with all of the complete migration into a production environment, all of that from their 7 access databases, and then coming from the Transport Main Roads one as well. So the Transport Main Roads actually took very, very heavy use of the workflow behavior, because it was an accreditation system that needed to go through quite a few gates for applications to be approved or rejected based upon these gates. And that one took a little bit longer. I believe that ended up being a total of 8 weeks from start to finish, with majority of the features and functionality being spun out within the first week. So that's from the Transport Main Roads was an access. Was an Excel spreadsheet, and then Police New South Wales was a series of access databases. So that's where Developer API, CRUD were the really big winners for those 2 government projects.
Yeah. Any questions?
Oh,
yeah.
I've seen a demo before, and you talked about when you showed the demo how many lines of code were written in that 15 minutes. So today, when you showed us the demo that you pulled back up from before, how many lines of code are created when you do the demo?
Let me build and find out. I don't know off the top of my head, but I'll just super quickly share my screen.
So this is actually a good opportunity, because this will actually give you the number of lines of code that have been customized as well. So that's some of the custom components that have been fit to make, for example, the Markdown editor.
Just got to warm up. The anticipation makes the explosion that much more exciting. There we go. All right, so you can see here on this console that we are getting more human written lines and files coming through. So it's a bit different, but we're still writing it's still 96% bot written. So yeah, that one, the LMS is about 120,000 lines of code.
So just talking to one of the big benefits that I didn't really touch on before for those, the big one that comes to mind was Transport Main Roads project, is the data governance and the security governance we actually have over the code that's produced was a really, really big win for us. Primarily because we didn't really need to worry about the security beyond what their security requirements were, like, access control, what user group should have access to what, because out of the box, Codebots ensured and guaranteed that for us. Especially when you're working with some of the sensitive data that's involved in those applications, that was a really big, it really helped manage that risk for us when I was in the services business. Which that's out of the box as well, using that security diagram.
So far, I've seen that you guys are talking about migration databases, but they are all connected to applications. So how about migration of data warehouses or creation of data warehouses based on an existing data depot, let's say? So that has way less interface with an end user. It's more a back-end application practically.
So that's actually where you get some of the most benefit out of Codebots, primarily because all the time and effort you would need to put into the application itself would be just ensuring that your schema is correct, and then your migration step of actually migrating the data from that data warehouse, if you want to migrate it, or alternatively, just making sure that schema is correct, because the administration panel that Tessa showcased before, where we had a look at all those behaviors, actually covers the use case of that management of those data warehouses by itself. That's already done. And for that
it
service,
could theoretically be 100% bot written.
Yeah, but think about that. A data warehouse usually has multiple layers, so it's not just one set of schema. You practically have to go through some multiple layers of transformation of data. So it's a bit more complex than just the migration practically.
yeah. So that's a really good point. And that the result of that one, depending on the data warehouse, is you could, and this is what we were actually scoping at one point for the Queensland government, was a transformation or a collection of dashboards to manage a data warehouse. And they had multiple different data sources that they wanted to manage, or they're all fairly centralized, but we would have spun out multiple Codebots apps to manage that. Of course, if you need the application layer to actually manage the transformations itself, that can be done, no worries at all, in that custom code stage.
Okay, thank you.
So as part of this session, what we'll do is we'll actually offer everyone who attended the opportunity to book a one-to-one with our staff members. So if you've got more specific questions or questions that we weren't able to answer today, what you can do is you can book in the one-to-one, tell us what you want to talk about, and we'll sit down and have a half-hour discussion with you, answering any questions, doing a further demo. You can talk to us about your specific idea which you want to build, and we'll tell you whether we think Codebots can help, and we'll be honest if we don't think Codebots will be able to help very much. So you're most welcome to, if you want to ask more in-depth questions about that, we can get, I think we might get a head of technology on a call like that one, so you might be able to answer those questions better as well. Are there any other questions? I'm going to take that as a no. I might pass it back to you then, Teresa.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say thank you very much for coming and showing this to us. As someone who is currently working on creating a bit of a front-end application for users to access some of our databases, I can attest to how much work this is. Building these sort of UIs and connections on top of existing databases, especially databases that don't really talk to the systems that we want to use right now. So this demo is something I'm going to be bringing to my team and just showing it to them and asking if it's something we want to look into, because it does look like quite an interesting opportunity to make that process more efficient. But yeah, thank you very much for the time that you've put into this. And if you want to send over any documentation or use case studies, I would be happy to share those with the group on our Slack channel. And otherwise, just thanks for taking the time to be here, and thanks everyone for coming to listen.
Thank you very much.